Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ealing Road podcast, where on today's show, we're going to be going over our fifth away victory on the spin, this time away at Bournemouth. Got Craig and Dan with me. Craig, how are you?
Brilliant, mate. Absolutely brilliant. I'm very happy to be back as well. I feel like it's been ages since I've been on, but you guys have been holding down the fort.
We have been. Dan, how are you?
Oh, good. It's always sunny in Bournemouth, and we always seem to do well there, so it's great.
I know. The record goes on as we put out in our post full-time tweet. They've not beaten us since 2014.
I think we're the only Premier League team they've never beaten.
I know. Must be something
that doesn't count the
playoff
first leg, does it? Yeah.
No, it doesn't, because that's not technically a league. It's not a league fixture apparently, which I think's a little bit weird. But you'd have to go back all the way. I think it's August or November 2014. Sorry, for the last time they beat us in the league. But there was a lot of records. We're going to talk about it in Tweet of the Week. Just before we get going, remember to drop a comment down below, subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, follow us on the socials, at the Ealing Road on Twitter, at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Tweet of the Week. I think we'll start with the records because we mentioned them at the top. So Callum, I believe, who will appear on the pod again, he put in a tweet from Football 365 after the game. Or was it Callum or Craig? Want to be one of you. But they tweeted out after the... Was it Craig?
It was me, yeah.
It was Craig, right, okay. Craig sent a tweet into our group chat from Football 365 with a few mind-boggling numbers, as they put it. Brentford have never ended a single Premier League match day lower than 16th. Brentford are only one of 10 clubs with a positive goal difference in an all-time Premier League table. And Brentford, this is the big one for me. Brentford have scored more Premier League goals than Manchester United since their promotion. Craig, how insane is what? I couldn't believe that last one in particular.
Well, it just shows how well we do with our, we speak about it so much, but it shows how well we do with our recruitment. Ivan Toney bagged a load of goals. Wissa bags goals. Brian bags goals. We know where to find goals to bring into the team. And it helps when we play some entertaining football as well.
It also helps that Man United are fucking shit.
Oh, yeah.
Dan, I'll come to you for the next tweet of the week. This was one that I think did the rounds a lot, and there was a lot of engagement. No surprise about who it is. Gaff, the Super Bees. He quoted a Premier League graphic that they put up after the game, basically showing Brentford's home and away form and how it's kind of flipped on its head. And the caption of their tweet was, "What do you notice about Brentford's home and away form this season?" Gaff said, "It's very simple. We beat the teams that we should be beating, can't beat the teams that are actually quite good, with the exception of the double against Bournemouth and the home win against Newcastle, in brackets, got fortunate in both. People don't want to accept it, but we've had an extremely lucky season to still be in the European race." Dan, as the resident pessimist in recent weeks, do you want to take this one?
You can see where he's coming from in terms of, I said last week that this season's been quite predictable in terms of who we've beaten and who we haven't beaten. And we are beating the same teams, which can kind of explain our home and away form. I don't agree that we were lucky to beat Bournemouth or that we were lucky to beat Newcastle. I think we deserved what we got in those games. I also think that we deserve to be exactly where we are, which in my opinion is slightly out of the European race at the moment, unless we can do something that we haven't already done this season and maintain some consistency against the better sides. But otherwise, I think we're where we deserve to be. And like we said last week, I think it's a good season, but it could be a better season because we're seeing teams like Forest, teams like Bournemouth, although we're only 3 points behind Bournemouth now, having a good season. So it's been a good season. I don't think we should be getting too down, particularly after a win. We've got to enjoy the wins. It's still a good season. You never know what could happen. I won't completely rule it out, but the next few games will be a big challenge again, and we can see if we can join that race. But I don't think we're in that race at the moment.
But I completely agree. And, we get some people in the comments saying we're being a bit too critical at times, saying we're looking for people to blame. I don't think this has been a bad season at all. We can't really say any season looking like we're pushing towards the top half of the table is a bad season. But Gaff in particular, this is a message because I know that you'll be listening. Just enjoy the wins. Just and there's a few people on social media, particularly Twitter, that just they tweet out Callum as well. Callum is one. Callum was betting against us. As soon as that first goal went in, he put in the group chat, this could be 4 or 5. And
he captained Clivert, didn't he, in his fantasy team?
he captained Cliver as well. He's just like, I said, find me someone who hates Brentford as much as Callum. And I feel like Callum and Gaff and a couple of others on Twitter could have a proper like hate watch around Brentford if they really wanted to. But just enjoy the wins, guys.
I must say, it's impressive that we scored 9 goals in 3 games. Those 3 that he mentioned, Newcastle at home, Bournemouth at home, and Bournemouth away. It's impressive that we could score 9 goals in those 3 games and it still be lucky.
Yeah, I don't get that. I don't get that either. I think he tweeted about the Wolves game as well, and he was like, we took our foot off the gas twice in that game. We scored 5 goals in that game. It was arguably our best performance of the season. It's like, I don't get it. Anyway, like I get that when we lose, we can throw our toys out of the pram a little bit and criticize where we can or where we feel like criticism is necessary. But when we win, it's just like fucking hell, just enjoy. Just enjoy
50
it.
Premier League wins now as well, and no team has got there quicker since the mid-90s. So you're probably looking at the teams that basically started off in the Premier League, got there quicker than us. But ever since then, there's not been a better promoted team over so many seasons than us. So I think that's massive, considering the teams that have come up over the years and the fact that we've sustained it and we've reached 50 and we've done that the quickest for anyone in 30 years. So we've got to be doing something right to be having records like that.
You just reminded me, Dan, just before we kick off into the episode, on a completely random tangent, who do you want to get promoted from the Championship this year? Is Leeds? Sure, we want Leeds to come up. Whether they will or not is a different question. Do you not want Leeds, Craig?
No.
They'd be the biggest threat to us, I think. I think they're the one that have potentially, if they invest correctly and if Daniel Farke learns from his previous experiences at Norwich, they've got a stadium which is a difficult place to go. I think they've got the financial power potentially to make a challenge of it. Whereas if we see the likes of Burnley and Sheffield United again, I don't really think they'll do a lot. I think we'll see a repeat of what we've seen previously from them. So I think it will be Leeds, but I think they're probably the biggest threat to everyone else in terms of trying to stay up.
Sunderland, Coventry under Lampard, that'd be quite a good story.
Coventry,
it's something different, yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah, no, but a Leeds away day is very needed, especially for someone who lives in Leeds. But anyway, I digress. Let's get on to the Bournemouth game. Craig, I'll come to you first. Initial thoughts, and then we'll kind of run through the action from the game.
Going into the game, I think I'm in the same mindset of a lot of Brentford fans. I was going into it thinking, you know what, this is going to be really difficult. We know what Bournemouth are like. We know how good they can be on their day. And realistically, I was happy with a point going into this game. So to come away with all 3, walking out the ground, it was such a great feeling. And it feels like, Dan, you mentioned it so many times, it feels like it's the first time this season, bar Bournemouth at home and Newcastle at home, that we've beaten one of the teams that are in and around us that necessarily we should be beating, like Leicester, Ipswich, Wolves, like when we beaten them when they're around the bottom. Southampton feels like we've beaten finally one of those teams who's having a good run, but having a good season. And it was a really good feeling. It's a really good away end. I really enjoyed it.
Dan?
It was good. It was quite an even game. It could have gone either way. I thought both teams had chances. They will probably be a bit disappointed with the goals that we scored. We can be a little bit disappointed with the goal that they scored. But I think in terms of chances, especially as we moved into the second half, we were a bit lucky not to concede more. But it's these types of close games that we haven't come out on top of enough this season, or at least got a point from enough this season. Again, we was talking last week about how we've lost so many games. We've not turned any of those into just getting a point here and there. So it's nice on occasion for it to be a close game and for it to go in our favour and for us to be able to get all 3.
We'll talk about the end of the game and how well I thought we saw it out. But you mentioned their goal and how we'll be disappointed with it. Craig, I'm not too sure what Janelt's doing there. I don't know whether to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it is the second time he's turned his back on the ball for an own goal. It's like, I don't know, I've watched it back a couple of times now, and he's either going to run into Collins' face first and head the ball away, or he kind of turns around and puts his back to it. I don't know. What was your take on the goal? I thought it was just sloppy.
To be honest, when I was watching it, and I've watched it back, I don't think he does turn his back, does he? But it's almost as if he comes in with his arm.
Yeah.
And it does bounce off. It looks like it bounces off the top half of his arm and then goes in or loops over Mark Flecken and goes in. So if it doesn't go in, it's probably going to be a penalty for handball there anyway. But you kind of got a feel for Janelt because it's sort of twice he's been in the wrong place at the wrong time and been unfortunate with the goal that's gone in. But what I would say is credit to them. We've seen heads drop in the past when we've conceded silly goals, and I don't feel like that happened. We created a few chances almost immediately after their goal, and it wasn't long before Wissa scores anyway. So I think Vitaly can feel a bit hard done by with the way that the ball has gone in. And a lot of fans there, Dan, I don't know if you agree as well, they had so much success down our right hand side with a reverse pass splitting through between Brian and Aya, and the ball was working every single time down that gap, and that's where one of their goals came. That's where their goal came from. Sorry, that's where their goal came from. But they had so much success in doing that, and I felt like Brian and Semenyo this game sort of mirrored their performances, where going forwards, they actually looked like they was going to create some chances. Obviously, Brian gets the assist and Semenyo hits the bar really early in the second half. But defensively, and watching the highlights as well, Brian gets to a point and he sort of takes his foot off of the gas and relaxes and lets the defensive do their work. But we get caught out because of it. And then with the Schade chance, which I think isn't far after we go 1-1, sorry, Semenyo just stops, and it felt like they kind of mirrored their performances where going forward they did really well, but defensively they were a bit sloppy. And it was a bit of defensive sloppiness that meant we conceded that goal.
It was always going to be tough down that right with Kirkez and Semenyo, because Kirkez in particular, like every time they got the ball in the final third, he was always looking to go through that gap between Brian and Aya. But you mentioned those chances, Craig, and we can talk about Schade because, again, kind of splitting opinion on socials. He has that first chance that I think you're on about before we get the equaliser, when his first touch just really lets him down in the box. It was just
that's not the one I'm thinking of, but that's a horrendous first touch.
The second one would have been such a great goal. This comes after the equaliser. We'll come back to the equaliser because we were talking about Schade. We'll talk about it now. Because there's that run from Schade to pick the ball up, pop it off to Brian, then Brian nutmegs the player, and then he just uses the afterburners to just breeze past Howson. If that's a confident Kevin Schade, Dan, he's firing that across the box into the far corner, but he for some reason picks no one out in the middle. Like he's not. Wissa was behind. He doesn't get his head up, or for whatever reason, maybe he's gone for goal and he's just shanked it wide. But it was, for me, Dan, it was encouraging to see him. Like, I don't think we've seen that kind of run from the right this season as much. Whereas in that first season when we signed him, he always came on in the right wing, and he's able to use his pace to just kind of knock the ball and go. Is that something that we could potentially see more next season?
Yeah, he's got the pace and power to do that kind of thing, but the biggest doubt with him is that touch and that final ball coming in, and he's got to become much more consistent with that, whether that is across the box, and Wissa needs to be anticipating that, ready to attack it, or whether that is with his finishing. I think he has made some progress. I think earlier in the season we were talking about a very unconfident Schade who wasn't really finishing anything. Now we do see moments of quality from him, but it's just about getting that consistency now. But I think if we look where he is now and look where he was, say, September time, I think he has made progress, and I think he is showing more of that quality, but it's just about getting it more consistent now, because we are seeing it now. I don't think we were really seeing it right at the beginning of the season, but it's just about that consistency moving forward. And hopefully if Brian leaves, he takes that responsibility, because the onus will be on him to step into that role as a more senior member, certainly of the attack.
The goal, we'll talk about the goal, comes from, well, the corner comes from a ball from Norgaard into Damsgaard. And then obviously we know about the set piece that followed. But just on Norgaard in general, Craig, I wasn't at the game, so I couldn't really say, but I was watching it. I just think week on week, this guy just proves that he is so important for us. Like the line splitting passes that he plays, everything that we've talked about before, we've waxed lyrical about him this season. But I still can't believe it that there were still kind of tweets after the Villa game when that Everton rumour came out, which I don't think there's much truth in that, because I think Norgaard actually said after the match with Sky that there's been like positive developments with the contract talks with Brentford. But I just still can't believe that some people are saying he's done, because I don't think this season he's shown any sign of that whatsoever. And I think Saturday again was just another kind of proper captain's performance from him.
Yeah, and to top it off with the winning goal is just perfect, isn't it? It was a great performance, and we miss him a lot more than what I think we want to believe in ourselves as well. Because you look at Janelt, you look at Jarmo, you look at Konak, who I know we're gonna talk about these players as well, but they don't at the moment seem to step in and fill that number 6 role that Norgaard leaves when he is not available, which he does so well almost every single game. It's very rare that we talk about him negatively, shall we say. It's almost never. And yeah, the split passes that he's doing, and actually, this is going to sound a bit crazy. I want to give Damsgaard a little bit of criticism here. He took far too. I know we scored from that resulting corner, but he took far too long to decide who he was going to pass it. It's like he had too many options and he didn't know who to pass to in that scenario. I know we scored from the corner, so maybe I'm being a bit pedantic, but yeah, Norgaard, when he's not in the team, there's just too big of a hole in midfield. And if we're not going to give him a new contract, then we absolutely need to go shopping in the summer for an out 6.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. He was immense. I was working the game. Jonathan Pearce said on 5 Live that he's one of the most underrated players in the Premier League, or underrated midfielders in the Premier League. I was like, you're absolutely bang on, but please don't say that on national radio, because we don't want anyone sniffing around there. Dan, 36 goal contributions for Wissa and Mbeumo this season. You did the post-match tweet and you were talking about set pieces. Nice to see one of them come off again. I don't think we've scored directly from a corner once or twice this season before, but yeah, 36 goal contributions, another set piece, Dan.
Yeah, I think, of course, it's always good to see us score from a set piece. If I'm being a bit more rational about it, I think Bournemouth will be very disappointed that Wissa, and it was some leap again by Wissa. We know, that he can get up and he can challenge for the ball, and he got up really high, and it was a great header. So don't take anything away from him. But I think Kepa's in the middle of nowhere. He's not very commanding as a goalkeeper, and I think they'll be very disappointed to concede that one. And I think even looking ahead to the second half with the throw-in, I'm less surprised that we score from a throw-ins. I do still think we do have that effectiveness from a throw-in, but the strategy at throw-ins is literally just throw it as far as you can, create some chaos in the box, and if the ball bounces, which it did a few weeks ago as well when we score from a throw-in, then it causes chaos, and we're quite good at getting that contact in the box. And Norgaard with a brilliant finish, and he gets so many big goals as well. He's not just a number 6; he can do a bit of everything. So that's what we're talking about with him. So it's pleasing, and obviously you've got to credit Keith Andrews. Wissa actually went up to Keith Andrews when he scored to give him some credit. So it's progress, I guess we could say. I want to see a bit more. I still want to see us do maybe some more clever routines. Even watching Newcastle in the cup final, the way they did that with Dan Burn peeling off, I want to see us do things like that and be a bit more creative with our corners. We did
do that for a while. Do you remember that kind of back post corner routine where Pinnock would just peel off? We did it for ages.
This season we've not really seen any of that. We've not really seen anything I would say that's too imaginative, and we need to do a bit more of that. I think I've credited Keith Andrews for regarding us defensively at set pieces, and I think he deserves that. But this is a start. I think we need to see a bit more still in terms of more creative solutions, because we can't rely on someone like Kepa to be in the middle of nowhere every time we get a corner in order to score.
After the halftime whistle went, Craig, there's obviously that probably the biggest chance of the game for Antoine Semenyo, I'd say. Kluivert literally puts it on a sixpence for him to head in. And he should just head it straight down, because if he heads it straight down, it's probably a goal, no matter where it goes, because he's so close to the goal. But Flecken stood tall. We didn't make the save. It comes back off the bar. And then we go and get a goal. But I want to hand over to you for some Flecken love, because I feel we're going to talk about some subs and their kind of impact in that second half in terms of us holding on to that lead and just seeing the game out. But he made quite a few saves, Flecken, and a lot of them are routine, but it would have been, last season I can imagine one of those going in, especially at the start of the season. And this time it's like when the ball bobbles, or when he sees it late, or when it's coming through a crowd of players, you're not ever kind of wincing, because he's shown recently that he's kind of, he's equal to any of those efforts from outside the box at least.
What else do you add to that? That's
Sorry.
spot on, isn't it? What else do you add on that? Yeah, it's nice to see it from fans, isn't it? Like from other fans as well. So normally it's me. So yeah, Mike, I'll let you take that one.
Okay. No more fucking love.
What I will say, one thing I want to say is, I feel like he's become more commanding of his own penalty area. I don't know if you guys agree, but I feel like he's been more commanding of his penalty area, catching balls that are higher up rather than letting them go across. He still does it every now and then, lets the ball float across, but he's been a bit more commanding of it. And like you said, there's definitely efforts that last season the first half of last season definitely would have gone in. But there's a real big chance. I know we haven't got to our goal yet, but there's a real big chance right near the end of the game. I don't know if we've even put it in our running order. We might have, which is that David Brooks chance at the end. And we got very lucky. We got very lucky with, because it just hits Mark Flecken and somehow stays the other side, the right side of the line for us. And when you watch the highlights back, he actually rolls the ball forwards off of the line. So we got a bit fortunate with that one. So that's technically a good save. So he won us the game. There you go. Viva Mark Flecken.
Dan, you mentioned, because we kind of covered the Norgaard goal through the set piece, obviously great to see, and a really good finish from Norgaard as well, who you mentioned in your post-match tweet about the subs. Cognac in particular, I thought was really good.
Yeah, I think it was another game where before the game you look at the bench and you think, at least Vandenberg's back, great, but Jensen's gone again. He's injured. So you look at that bench and you think there's no depth there. And I think Thomas Frank did trust some of his subs in this one, even though we were ahead and we had something to defend. I was a bit unsure when he brought Ben Mee on again and went 5 at the back with 4 centre backs as well, given Vandenberg was also on the pitch at that stage. But we sorted it out really well. And I thought Konak in particular, in terms of his ability to win duels, I think it was better than what I've seen from him before. I thought before, earlier in the season when he had chances, he was at times maybe a bit lightweight, but Konak this time, he was winning those duels in the middle. And I think Yarmo, we've seen it from him before, but we haven't really seen that type of gritty performance on Konak in the last 10 minutes, which you saw here. So I thought that was impressive, and that's promising for him at the future. And at the end, obviously, he was the one to get pushed at the front of the away fans to get credit. So yeah, good game from both of them, but Konak in particular, given that he's not played so much this season and the impact he was able to make in terms of us being able to see that out.
There were so many nice touches from him, and you're absolutely right, because he featured quite a few times at the start of the season off the bench, and then we've not seen much of him recently. But he just came to the midfield and he just looked like he was meant to be there, which is great in terms of, the future going forward. We've got 2 players like Yarmo and Cognac, who I feel like could be the future for Brentford. Yarmo specifically has played more football than Cognac, but it was a good cameo from him. Let's talk about some players. Craig, we've spoken about Norgaard, we've spoken about Schade. Nathan Collins. Oh my God. I love this man. I absolutely adore him, Craig.
Unbelievable. I've got a mate, a really close mate, who's a Spurs fan. And for love nor money, I cannot figure out why he hates Nathan Collins. And I just think it's because he doesn't like how good he actually is, because Nathan Collins is fantastic. He's such a good player, and it is crazy. Again, he's another player like Mark Flecken, where last season we was talking about him, he's either really good or he's really bad, and this season he's just been unreal. Again, we said this so many times. If it wasn't for Damsgaard having such a good season, Nathan Collins wins player of the season. But as the season goes on, I'm starting to think more and more now Nathan Collins is being put into the limelight a bit more as well. You see a lot more videos of him on social media and stuff. That he could be our next, like, he'll be our captain, I reckon, if he sticks around for long enough and Norgaard doesn't play. I think he's our captain next. But he's just the next big thing that we've got as well. You know, we've got Wissa, we've got Mbeumo, we had Tony, we had Benrahma, we have Watkins. He just feels like that next big thing that could come out of Brentford. And I'm so glad that he's picked up consistency this season, because I can't think off the top of my head, or I've purged it from my head, that he's had a bad game this season so far. I think he's been phenomenal.
Absolutely. I feel the Villa game, we kind of criticised him for Watkins' goal, but he's man of the match award, especially because of how much was made, or how much has been made of Zabarnyi and House and that partnership, and how many Bournemouth fans were telling me to get in the bin when I did that combined 11 TikTok with when I chose Collins over Zabarnyi, and Nathan Collins then gets a man of the match performance. So shout out to the Bournemouth fans who haven't go at me for that. Atmosphere. Before we do atmosphere chat, I saw another tweet, and I'll come to you on this one, Dan. I thought Wissa was excellent on Saturday. Gets the goal. He was a real handful for their centre backs. Linked the play really well. Was a willing runner all the time. Did a lot of Brian's running for him. But there was a Bournemouth fan that tweeted this after the game and said, "Would it be crazy to say that out of Damsgaard, Wissa, and Mbeumo, that Mbeumo is the worst?" Dan.
When they're all at their best, I'd say no. I think Mbeumo at his best can be definitely better than Wissa. Probably on par with Damsgaard when Damsgaard's also at his best. Possibly there's a shout, especially in the last month or two, to say he's been the least consistent in terms of he's more likely to go missing in games. I think Wissa can sometimes do that as well. But Wissa can also be a poacher. Wissa can also have quite a quiet game at times and then still maybe come out of a goal. Maybe that's more because he plays down the middle. There's less reliance on him trying to create more of his own chances, whereas perhaps Bryan Mbeumo relies a lot more on him trying to create something for himself from that wide position. I'd say definitely Damsgaard is the most consistent of the three, and that's where Bryan needs to improve, and that's what we've spoken about before in terms of if he goes to a bigger side, they won't tolerate it. Someone like Salah can go missing, but he'll always pop up with a goal towards the end. Bryan doesn't do that towards the end of games. Even if he is on a quiet day, it's very rare that he then scores and brings something out of nothing. So I think that's where he needs to improve. He knows he can do it. I think at times there's a bit too much of cutting in and trying the same thing. Maybe he could try and go the other way sometimes. But that's all stuff that he can still add to his game. And I'm sure if he does go to a bigger club, he'll learn that quick. And he'll learn what he'll need to do quick in order to get in the team and stay in the team at a bigger club.
Craig, agree?
Yeah, I do feel like sometimes it's like comparing apples and oranges as well, though. We know what Damsgaard brings to the team, and we know how different Damsgaard is to what Wissa and Mbeumo bring to the team as well. But we also saw it last season and the season before when we had Ivan Toney, how different a player Yoane Wissa actually was, because now he's moved into that central role. He's kind of taken himself away from Bryan Mbeumo in that comparison kind of way. That Wissa's now this season, I would say he's a striker. He's not a winger. He's absolutely been our through the middle player. Plays as a number 9. Is our striker. He's the one that we're going through. Whereas the last couple of seasons when we've had Ivan Toney, he's been playing out wide, or if we play as a 2, he's been playing off of Ivan Toney. So he himself has morphed himself into a completely different role to what Bryan Mbeumo actually is. And Bryan just needs a bit, I don't know if it's confidence, because he doesn't look like he lacks confidence at the moment. Maybe it's just a goal or two that he needs to pop up with, although he still does that like he did with Leicester. But it's a strange one, isn't it, at the moment with Bryan, because his run of form just hasn't been fantastic, yet we all know what he's capable of.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with both of you, to be honest. I do feel like if you look at the replies to that tweet as well, there's a lot of people saying that's not a crazy shout. But to say that he's the worst, like you said, Dan, at his best, I don't think that's true, because I feel like he's got a higher ceiling than Wissa at his best. Atmosphere-wise, boys, enjoy it on Saturday?
Yeah, really enjoyed
I liked it. Yeah. Bournemouth away is always a good one. It's always sunny, like I said. It almost had a bit like last season in a way. It had that sort of vibe that we could just enjoy it, and it was a good game, I thought, as well. So that always helps.
They're like Leicester. They really rattle me though, because they're a fan base with two drums. Because they've got one in the stand right by the away fans, and then one in the other stand which is behind the other goal, and it really frustrates me that they've got two drums singing two different things at the same time, and it bugs me. So that's the only negativity I can take from the game.
Dan, Europe?
We need to beat Newcastle and probably follow that up with a good result against Chelsea as well. And I can see it happening against Chelsea. We're going to go on to it, but I just can't really see us going on a Wednesday night up to Newcastle and winning. So until we get, I think we probably need 3 wins in a row, and we've got one just to put us in amongst that group. And given our fixtures, I'll still say, given our fixtures, I just don't think it's very likely. But of course, I'd love it to happen. I know what you're going to say.
I want to add some bits. No, I don't think. I think I'm thinking a bit differently here. I wanted to compare where we are now to where we were 2 seasons ago when we finished 9th and 2 points outside of Europe. So after 29 games in that, from the 2022-23 season where we finished 9th, we were 2 points better off then. So we had 43 points then and 41 points now. We've scored 5 more goals this season at this point than we did at that point of the season. The thing is, we've conceded, actually saying that's not that many. I think we've conceded 7 more goals this season at this point than we had at that point of last season as well. That season, so we're 2 points off our best season in recent history. So it's not crazy at the moment to say that we're fully out of it, and we know how well as a team, as a club, we finish every season. It's strange, but my concern, Dan, as well, agreeing with you, is we got to play Fulham, Brighton, Newcastle, Chelsea, Forest, Arsenal. So easy running.
What I will say is that I think a loss on Saturday probably would have killed it fully. The thing is that now we've won, I'm fully back on the Europe.
You're clinging on, mate.
Well, and especially with that thing that I posted in the chat as well, which is the list of how we could have down to 11th.
It's not going to happen.
I know it's not going to happen. Down to 11th could be in the Premier League, in Europe, one way or another.
It could go down to 9th or 10th. If only some of that happens. And it goes down to 9th or 10th. That is perhaps a little bit more realistic. So, we've got to get ourselves in the best position as possible.
Well, obviously, the top 4, the Champions League, plus we get 5th this year because of how well clubs did in Europe. So there's 5 Champions League places. Then Brighton, if they finish 6th, will qualify for Europa League. If Bournemouth was to finish 7th, they qualify for Europa League by winning. And so it says Bournemouth finished 7th and qualify for the Europa League by winning the FA Cup. Now, obviously, that's not necessarily guaranteed either. Chelsea finished 8th and qualify for Europa League by winning the Conference League. Villa finished 9th and qualify for the Champions League by winning the Champions League. United or Spurs finished 10th and qualify for the Champions League by winning the Europa League. That means the next best team would then go into Europe, which would be 11th. So fingers crossed.
Until Crystal Palace come 11th.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like a banker to me. Lump on, boys. Just before we talk about Newcastle, I got a message. I got a DM on Twitter the other day, or not the other day, the other week, from a guy called Adam J. Sullivan. He does prints and design. So for those watching on YouTube, you'll see the kind of drawings that he does. He sent me a few. This one's Brian and Bumo. This one's Yoane, Wissa and Brian. They're really, really great. Honestly, I got sent them and I was like, these are unbelievable, first of all. There's no way that people won't want to buy them. Neil Mope for you. Sorry for the people listening on Spotify, but this is very much a visual section of the pod. But yeah, we're going to be running a giveaway for some of these prints. So keep across our socials for details on that. They're really, really amazing. And if you want to get him on Instagram, it's ajsullivan.art on Instagram. And you can check out some of his designs. Look at there. Craig's got one. Is that what it is?
Signed Charlie McDonald.
There you go. Exactly.
So thanks,
brilliant.
Thanks, Adam, for that one as well.
Yeah. So Adam, if you're listening, I hope you're listening. We'll organize a kind of giveaway on that. We'll put the details on our Twitter account, on our Instagram account, and hopefully get some of these prints off to Brentford fans that want them. Moving on to Newcastle, chaps. 2-week international break now. Injured players potentially coming back after the break include Igor Thiago, Gustavo Nunez, Rico Henry, potentially. We don't know.
Aaron played 45 minutes as well. Rico played 45 minutes, I believe, recently as well.
Last night, wasn't it? Last night.
I think it was yesterday. Rico played 45 minutes, yeah, so that's good as well. Brilliant.
That's good to know. So, yeah, Thiago, Nunez, Rico, and Hickey all potentially could maybe feature. I'm not going to say.
I was going to say come back because Gustavo Nunez still. It's April when they come back, and he still hasn't played for us.
But Dan, like you said, historically a very difficult place for us to go to. A win would make it 6 from 6 on the road. How likely? How confident are you?
Not very. I think after they won the Carabao Cup, I think the ground will be buzzing. I think there'll almost be a hero's welcome. And it's normally quite an intimidating place to play anyway. The away fans are kept well away from the pitch up in the gods. So I think it will be a very difficult away fixture. I think we'll need to get on top early on in order to quieten down the crowd. And we'll need to probably catch them on a bad day. I think at their best, and we saw it perfectly against Liverpool, that midfield is so strong. They're very physical. They'll battle. They've got Isak up front, who's one of the best strikers in the league. If Pinnock's up against him, I would be maybe a little bit worried. And although they do have a few injuries, I'm not sure if Anthony Gordon has served his ban yet or not, or if he's got another one to go. He might have another one to go, so that's good that they won't have him. They won't have Lewis Hall. There's a few that they're missing for the rest of the season, but I still think that they're very, very strong. And if they play anywhere near their best, I think it'll be a very difficult evening. And they've obviously got a lot to fight for themselves, and they'll be determined to try and get back into the Champions League. So it will be difficult. We don't have a good record there. You could say we have not too much to lose. You know, we've got to give it everything. Certainly more of a battle than we did when we lost to them in the Carabao Cup. We want to play better than that, and I'm sure we will, because we won't make so many changes, but I can't see it. I think a draw would be a good result, to be honest.
Craig?
I can't help but feel like it would be incredibly Brentford for us to go and win there after they've just won the League Cup, because they're going to be on such a high. Like Dan said, the atmosphere is going to be incredible there. They're going to obviously do a display of some kind with the cup, with the trophy, and the fans will as well. And I just can't feel like it would be bloody hilarious as Brentford to go and win there after this. And I don't know. I get that feeling in here. I can imagine now we're going to go there and lose 5-0, but it would be so funny still to go there after this and win. I would love it.
I
would love it too. I just watching Dan as you were talking was just like, you're absolutely insane.
I just can't see it. And if we do, then we'll follow it up with a home defeat against Chelsea. I just don't think we're consistent enough at the moment. It's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that it's been a terrible season at all. I just think we're just a little bit off it. In terms of personnel as well, we've not got the depth on the bench. If the game's not going our way, unless all these players are miraculously back in 2 weeks' time, then if it's not going our way, we'll have very little options to change it off the bench again. And, you know, every team we played in recent weeks, really, you can tell the difference in terms of depth, and it makes such a difference if the game's not going our way to begin with, in terms of being able to bring people on to change that.
Thanks for bringing us all back down to earth, Dan. Really appreciate it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The Ealing Road podcast will be back after the international break. Just before we go, remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts on 5 wins away on the spin. Let us know who impressed in the Bournemouth game. Drop all of those thoughts in the comment section down below and we'll reply to as many as we can. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels. Follow us on the socials at the Ealing Road on Twitter, Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Craig, Dan, a pleasure as always.
Up the bees.